Okay, welcome folks, and welcome to our 2024 District 4 Basic Rules Clinic. This is number one of four Little League rules for a reason. Okay, we ask that you keep yourself on mute for this clinic. At the very end of it, I will talk live with anyone who wants to talk to me. The clinic is being recorded, and like all District 4 rules clinics, the video recordings will be posted on District 4's YouTube webpage. And you can see it right there at C4UA. So if you go to YouTube and go to at C4UA, you will come up with this page. These are our rules clinics from last year you're seeing down there. And as these progress, we will put each of them on there. So what are we doing with this rules clinic, these four rules clinics? Well, they're basic rules clinics, and they're designed for umpires, managers, coaches, staffs, players, basically anybody associated with Little League, they can be helpful for. What we're going to do is we're going to cover rules common to all levels of baseball and softball, but we will have an emphasis on minors and majors baseball. So we will make that distinction when it is just particular to minors and majors baseball. What we also want to do is acquaint you with the rule book and cover safety issues and to introduce the new 2024 rules. And finally, and this will be on our last rules clinic, we will introduce you to the 2024 minor and major division baseball interleague rules. So these run about 75 minutes and sometimes up to an hour and a half. We'll see. And each of them covers a different set of rules. And so this is what we will be covering in the coming weeks and also today. I do want to mention that we have two other rules clinics in District 4 that we give. The first is by Zoom, and it's a teenage baseball rules clinic. So if you're interested in rules that are particular to intermediate and junior baseball, that one will be held at 7 p.m. on February 21st. Again, register like you did here, kind of a little bit different. You'll hit the teenage baseball tab, and then that will take you to a page where you can register for that. We also run a softball rules clinic, and that's on Monday, February 26th from 6:30 to 8:30. That will be an in-person meeting. That's at the UC Extension office in Bissell Lane in Concord, and no registration is required. Just want to make a note, if there's a slide that comes up that you really want, remember we will have that recording on YouTube, but also just get your phones out and take pictures of slides that are necessary for you. So what are we going to do tonight? Tonight we're going to go through the rule book, first part of it. We're going to talk about types of rules. We will be talking about the 2024 new rules. And then we will start our progression through the rule book. And we're going to start with regulations and rules 1 and 2. And we highlight rules with short video clips when it's relevant. And also what we want to do is answer your questions periodically. So there are actually 4 question periods inserted into this presentation. And we'll come up to a slide that simply reads questions, and that's where I'll take the questions. But don't wait to that time to type in your question. Type it into the chat function and send it only to Don Waddell. And then Don Waddell will collect those and then ask them during that period. So let's get going. We're going to start with types of rules because sometimes there's a little bit of confusion when teams say, well, are we playing interleague rules, local rules? What rules are we talking about? There's actually 4 kinds of rules. We have the official playing rules and regulations. We have local rules, we have interleague rules, and we have ground rules. A lot of rules, but it actually isn't that confusing. So let's go through each one of these. So the official playing rules and the regulations are in the Little League rule books. There's one for softball, there's one for baseball, there's one for Challenger. And these are the basic rules that we play all Little League games by. And the official playing rules are broken up into 9 parts. And as you can see, we're going to be dealing with Rule 1 and 2, objectives of the game and definition of terms tonight. We used to only have the rule book, but now we have the app that you can download on your smartphone. And I highly recommend that you do this. It is free. It used to be about $5. It's free now. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, you can download this. One of the neat things about this rule book on your iPhone is that whenever there's an update, it will automatically update on your phone. So you never have to re-download it. So those are the official playing rules that we play by. But there's also something that we call local rules. And local rules cover areas in the Little League rule book in which options are given to the leagues. For example, are you going to use the 15, 10, or 8-run rule, or none of them? There's actually an option where in juniors baseball, instead of 90-foot bases, if you want to run 80-foot bases, you can. These are local rules, and each league should decide on all of these. And if your league has any questions about this, please contact me. I have the list of what those particular local rules are that you can decide on. And your league should decide on that before the season begins. Local rules can't contradict anything in the Little League rule book. In other words, you can't move the mound 5 feet closer to the plate if you want to. If you want to do something that contradicts Little League rule book, what you have to do is you have to fill out a waiver. The league president does that. He sends it to Ted Boet, the DA, who sends it to Western Region, and it goes to Williamsport. Now, third kind of rule, and that is, and can I please say that for everybody to please mute themselves? Thank you. Okay, we really need everybody to mute themselves. Okay. So districts can establish interleague programs, and these are games between various leagues. And District 4 has interleague programs for both baseball and softball. We have them from minors all the way through the senior softball division. And for the interleague rules for District 4, they are found on the District 4 website under each of these links. So if you go to our website, and I hope you have this pinned, saved, and there it is right there. Just do a Google search, California District 4 Little League. It'll come up with this. And this is our homepage. And just click on Little League Baseball or Teenage Baseball or Softball, whichever is relevant to you. And that will take you then to a page for softball. You can see that there are the interleague rules. And I'm sorry, this is an older slide. It says 2023 interleague rules. We now have all the 2024 interleague rules up for softball. If you were to click on the teenage baseball link or the Little League baseball link, it would take you to these pages. And you can see that the interleague rules are both posted here. We have one more set of rules, and that's ground rules. And ground rules cover rules that govern a particular field of play. And ground rules must be decided by the league prior to games being played on those fields. So examples of this, where dead ball areas are located. Say your fence doesn't extend all the way out to the outfield fence. You'd use a fence line extended. If you know the Martinez Lower Hidden Lakes field, you know that there's a gap between the home run fence and the dead ball area fence. So what if a ball is hit into that area? Those are what ground rules cover, rules for a particular field. And all of those should be posted on the league's websites. Okay, that's it for an introduction of rules. Now let's talk about new rules for the 2024 season. And there actually aren't that many of them. So the first one I want to make mention of, and this is very, very important, and this is part of regulations 1.10. And what this states is that all Little League volunteers who are required to fill out a volunteer form, this would be all managers and coaches, absolutely have to fill one out. Umpires, if you're going to do more than just a couple games, you have to fill one out. If you're going to have continued contact with children in Little League, you must fill out a volunteer form. So if you're required to do that, you also must, beginning this year, take the abuse awareness training provided by USA Baseball. And it must be dated after October 1st, 2023. There are no exceptions to this. And also starting this year, this training must be completed each and every year. So how do you get this training? Very easy. Go to, again, our District 4 website and go to Little League Forms on the side there. Click on that and you'll find a whole host of forms. And if you're going to do All-Stars and TOCs, you'll get to know this page, I guarantee it. So if you look over to the side, it says Abuse Awareness Training. If you click on that, it will take you to the registration for the USA Baseball site. You're going to have to establish a registration. You're going to have to put in your email. You're going to have to create a password. And then once you do that, it will take you to this page, and you can see it's logged in under me. And if you look at the page, there's a part that says Education at the Park. Click on that, then click on Courses. And then there's going to be a whole list of courses, and go down and find Abuse Awareness for Adults and click on Base Certification. And that will take you to the training. It lasts about a half an hour, but it's very, very important. It isn't just about things like sexual abuse, but it is about things like bullying and verbal abuse, physical abuse of children. Little League is taking this very, very seriously. I also want to highlight another regulation. Actually, regulations 1.10 through 1.13 are all new this year. And this is a new regulation, and this basically states that each league needs to establish a policy of one-on-one contact. Again, Little League is getting very serious about this. What it's designed to do is to assure that no adult will be able to have one-on-one contact with a child in Little League if there is no one else around, except for a few exceptions: emergency, written permission from the player's parent or legal guardian, or the volunteer is the parent or legal guardian of that child. I think this is the most, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is the most important point. I think a volunteer's interactions with players must be observable and interruptible by another adult. In other words, you're not going to take a player and go off to a secluded area where there's no other adult who can observe what you're doing, and no other adult can interrupt what you're doing. And again, it goes on talking about this. One of the things I'd like to say about this is, if you're thinking, well, what do I do if I, have a practice and everybody's left except for this one kid and his parents haven't showed up? It's not saying to leave that kid. And that's a situation where you would actually stay with the child. Okay, what about actual new playing rules? There are very few. There's actually only two that deal with the regular season. They both deal with softball, and there's only one that deals with the postseason. So let's go through these quickly. 2024 playing rules, new change in softball. Leaping is now allowed. So it's legal for a pitcher to leap. Both feet may be in the air at the same time. For those of you who've done softball in the past, you know that that has been illegal to this point. It's legal as long as those feet stay within the 24 width of the pitching plate and the pivot foot does not replant and push off. So here's a little video. These examples, which last year had been illegal, are now this year legal in Little League. You can see both feet off the ground. She doesn't replant. This is a legal pitching motion. This too. She gains a lot of air, but the leap is now legal and she does not push off with the back foot. So that's a perfectly legal pitching motion now for Little League. The other change is also in softball, and this is only for senior softball, only for senior softball. Senior softball used to have a DH rule, and they got rid of that, and they've replaced it with a DP flex, where you have a designated player and a flex player. Basically means that your lineup will have 10 players if you choose to use this. Remember, it's only in senior league. It's only if you bat 9, and it is optional. You'll now have 10 players in the lineup. One will be batting and one will play only defense. But what I want to remind you, if you decide to use this rule, and I'm not going to go into any depth on it because quite frankly, the ODH rule, I think I saw it once, maybe twice over the last 20 years in Little League. Know that there is still the mandatory defensive and offensive requirements, mandatory play. So if you have a player only playing defense, at some point, they will have to bat. If you have a player only batting, they will at some point have to play defense. And the final change for 2024, and this affects all stars only. So this is not relevant for the regular season, but it affects all levels of play below senior division. And what it states is for purposes of an at-bat, Rule 2 does not apply. Well, what does that mean? What it basically means is this, is when a player comes up to bat and they get on base, in the regular season, you can't be substituted for a courtesy runner if that's your first time at bat. But what it's saying is in all stars, you can be replaced by a courtesy runner. That's essentially what this rule has. So those are the only rule changes for 2024. So let's start going through the rule book, and we're going to start with regulations. And there's a lot of regulations that aren't that relevant to us because it's like, how do you choose teams, league boundaries, all that kind of stuff. But there are some that are very important for us, for umpires, for coaches, for managers. So let's highlight a few of these. This is mandatory play. And to me, this is what makes Little League very unique and something that I applaud. And that is that if you are a rostered player at the start of a game, you must play in the game. You must bat at least once, and you must play 6 defensive outs. They don't have to be consecutive defensive outs, but you need to play 6 defensive outs. Leagues can mandate more, and there are some leagues that mandate 9 defensive outs, for example. There are no exceptions to this rule. So if you're thinking, well, what if we have a 10-run rule or a 15-run rule? Or what if the game's called for darkness? Or what if it's a time limit game? It doesn't matter. Your players must meet mandatory play. Now, we know that there are instances where you do your best as a manager, but not everybody's going to get in that game. Maybe you made your substitutions in the 3rd inning, but the game ends in the 3rd inning. So what do you do? Well, the penalty, if a player doesn't get their mandatory play in, is that that player starts the next game. There are no exceptions to this. And then that player must meet mandatory play for the game that they didn't meet mandatory play in. So say a kid plays in a game, they get an at bat, but they only get 3 defensive outs. So the very next game that they're at, they have to start the game. They have to get their 3 defensive outs, and they then have to stay in the game until they meet the mandatory play for that current game. Only at that point can they be removed. There are penalties on managers for not meeting this, but mostly what this would be about is if a manager purposely doesn't play a player or doesn't allow them to start the next game, a league can suspend managers for that. So please, Little League, especially regular season, it's about kids playing. Make sure the kids get their time in. Okay, for that mandatory play, we talked about they have to have 1 at bat and 6 defensive outs. So what does bat at least 1 time mean? Well, for the purposes of meeting requirements of mandatory play, what it means is a player assumes the position of batter with no count, and one of the following occurs. They're retired as a batter, say they strike out, or they're retired as a batter runner, meaning they were thrown out at first, or they're retired as a runner. They got on first base, but then were forced out at second, or they reached base and scored, or after reaching bases, the inning ended. So that if you do one of those, you meet your bat at least 1 time for mandatory play. What this rule also states is that for the first time in a game, the first time a player comes up to bat, they cannot be removed. They cannot, if they get on base, they cannot be removed for a courtesy runner, a pinch runner, or a special pinch runner. They must run the bases. This is the part of the rule that's being suspended for postseason, but it's firmly in play for the regular season. What are 6 defensive outs? Well, 6 defensive outs. It doesn't matter if you play 3 defensive outs, sit on the bench, come back in, have 3 defensive outs. As long as sometime during the game, you get 6 defensive outs. Well, what if you're in the minor division and you have the 5-run rule and a team scores 5 runs and there hasn't even been a single out? For the purposes of mandatory play, a half inning that ends with a 5-run rule is considered to count as 3 defensive outs, even if no outs are made. Okay, we're following up with some more regulations. This is prior to and during a game. Only managers, coaches, players, and umpires are allowed on the field. Do not allow any of your parents or somebody else just wandering onto the field. Managers, coaches, players, umpires, that's it. If you have grounds crews that are finishing up the field, that's perfectly fine. A team may only have 3 adults allowed, even in pregame in the warm-ups. So one of the things that I do as an umpire when I walk onto the field, one of the first things I do is I scan the field and I begin looking for things. I begin looking for any safety violations and I start counting adults. And if a team has more than 3 adults, I'll go over to the manager and very politely remind them of the rule and say, you need to have one of your adults removed now. If they say, oh, they'll be gone by game time, be firm if you're an umpire and say, no, they must be gone now. In non-competitive minors and T-balls, you can have 4 adults on the field because it's a teaching opportunity and the more adults are helpful. However, know that in all of our levels of interleague in softball and baseball, in the minors, that you can only have 3 adults because it's interleague, it's considered competitive, and you can only have 3 adults. During the game, no bat boys, no bat girls. Players must remain in the dugout. If they're not on the field or in the bullpen, they can't be off wandering in the stands. An adult coach or manager must be in the dugout at all times there's a player in that dugout. There are no exceptions to this rule. and no one else is allowed in the dugout. Coach's younger kid, a friend of one of the players, they are not allowed in the dugout. Okay, Don, do we have any questions for this first part of the presentation?
So Jim, we don't have any questions that haven't been answered that pertain to regular season rules. You've done a good job.
Thank you, Don. Okay, but listen, if something comes up and you guys remember something, just put it in the chat for Don. Okay, let's move on then. So we're going to start with Rule 1, objectives of the game. We're not going through all of it. One of the things, if you look at Rule 1, it has a lot of the dimensions for the field, etc. We're not going to go through that, but there's some things we want to highlight from Rule 1, and there is a lot of equipment stuff that we need to go through for Rule 1. So the first thing I want to make mention of is that if you go to Rule 1 of the Little League rule book, whether it's baseball, whether it's softball, it will state Little League baseball, Little League softball in all divisions is a game. Let's never forget that. It's a game for kids. It is not an ego competition for adults. It's a game for kids. Let's make it safe. Let's make it fun. As an umpire, when I go out on the field, those are my first two goals for that entire game, is that those kids have a fun time and that those kids are safe. So this sign from Pleasanton Little League, I'm just a kid, it's just a game. My coach is a volunteer, the officials are human. No college scholarships will be handed out today. Let the kids play, let them have fun. Okay, what are some of the things that we need to know from objectives of the game? On deck batters. In majors and minors, softball and baseball, there are no on deck batters allowed. And only one batter is allowed out between the beginning of a half inning. We don't want to see two players out there swinging bats. There can only be one. There are no handling of bats in the dugouts. Why do we care about that? Because of this. That is a very angry and disappointed manager right there. So think about it this way. This is a major league dugout that has far more room than any little league dugout. These are adults who have much more of a spatial recognition of what is around them than kids. And even at this level, somebody can get hit by somebody swinging a bat. So that's why, as umpires, you see kids in the dugout holding bats. Tell the manager, hey, get your players to stop handling bats in the dugout. This is a safety issue first and foremost. In minors and majors, no metal cleats are allowed. You can have them in intermediate baseball and above and junior softball and above, but minors and majors, no metal cleats. No casts are allowed on the field at any level, not even soft casts, and that's for players, coaches, and umpires. Jewelry is a no-no. And I can't tell you how many times I stop games, call time, and have a player take off jewelry. It is for a safety reason. So just period. No bracelets of any kind, no earrings, no necklaces, nothing, no near nose piercings. What if a player says, oh, but I just got my ears pierced and I was told I can't take them out? They have a choice. Either the earrings come out or the player doesn't play for that game. If you see it, don't allow it on the field. What is the one exception? The one exception is medical alert bracelet or necklace. That we absolutely want to have players wear. And if any of your players have that, please, before the game, let the umpire know what the issue is so that they can look out for it during the game. As Little League umpires, we are required to check equipment before the game. I know some leagues don't have their youth umpires do this, but every league should have this. Before the game, teams should put out their bats, their helmets, and their catcher's helmets for the umpires to check and look for any illegal equipment and for any safety issues. So, what are we going to be looking for as umpires? And what you, if any coaches and managers are here, what should you be looking out for too? Well, on the helmets, we make sure that it has the NOCSAE emblem on. It's usually on the back of the helmet, off, sometimes off a little bit to the side. It has to have that. I don't think I've ever seen a helmet that doesn't. We will check for any kind of cracks in the helmet. We will check the inside of the helmet and make sure all the padding is there. If part of the padding is missing, we will not allow that helmet in the game. Consider it this way. The manufacturer put on that padding for a reason. It needs to be there. And also, if there is any kind of facial cage, we especially see this in softball more than baseball. If there's any kind of a cage, all the screws must be attached and they must be firmly screwed in. For C-flaps, and this is something we see mostly in baseball, this chin flaps, if we ask the manager for the manufacturer's notice on it, they should be able to provide for it. But generally, as an umpire, I've never asked for this. But what am I looking for? I'm looking for that no new holes were drilled in the helmet. If new holes were drilled in the helmet, that helmet is automatically tossed. And the manufacturer of the C-flap must match the manufacturer of the helmet. You can see down here with the X, that is a generic C-flap, and you cannot use those on helmets. If you have a Rawlings helmet, you need a Rawlings C-flap. If you have a Boombah helmet, you need a Boombah C-flap, no exceptions. What are we also looking for? We're looking for excessive stickers. Western region, I don't know if they still have this position, but they were teaching it in their rules clinics a few years ago that no more than 20% of a helmet can be covered in stickers, and the stickers can't be any larger than a silver dollar. And they especially can't be covering up an insignia. We also don't allow the chrome reflective helmets, and we don't allow any helmets that have been painted after manufacture. Catcher's gear. When do catchers have to wear their helmets? When do they have to put on all their gear? When do they not need it? Well, if a catcher is doing infield, outfield practice, and they're near a coach who has a bat, they have to wear their helmet with a dangling throat guard. If a catcher is warming up a pitcher in the squat position, and that's either in the bullpen, it's warm up between innings, or it's just out in the grass before the game, that catcher must wear that helmet with a dangling throat guard. During the game, catcher's helmet with a dangling throat guard. We have to have that dangling throat guard. For males, they must wear an athletic supporter with a protective cup. They must wear a catcher's mitt, and they must have a chest protector and shin guards on. Adults are allowed now to warm up pitchers pregame, during the game, on the field, in the bullpen. Do adults have to wear protective equipment? No. They can go ahead and get hit and hurt with that ball. Let them do it. So, what do we look for on a catcher's helmet? One of the first things we look for is that dangling throat guard. And the key word here is dangling. It can't be so tightly tied or attached that it doesn't dangle. We look to make sure all the screws are in and secure and tight on the face guard. We just like the batter's helmets, look inside, make sure all the padding is there, and we make sure it meets the NOC standard. It has that uh, emblem embossed on there. No skull caps are allowed in Little League at any level. Why do we care about making sure that catchers have helmets? This is the reason we care that they have helmets. Okay, that sounded very loud. I would hate to be that girl. I cut this video off because there was a 4-letter word yelled out at one point. Okay, let's move on to bats. So we're going to be talking about a defective bat versus an illegal bat. We're going to start with defective bats. Defective bats means that it's a bat that's damaged, that it's either cracked or bent or dented, or it has some kind of sharp edges. A defective bat is not an illegal bat. If a player steps into the batter's box with a defective bat, we're simply going to remove that bat. Nothing else happens. This is why we do equipment inspection, because we're looking for defective bats. We remove them from the game. Why do we care about this? We may not be able to catch this, but it's possible that if we find a defective bat, we will keep this from happening. I want you to watch the umpire, and I want you to watch his upper shoulder and head area. That is a lethal projectile there. So that's one of the reasons that we always check the handles of the bat, and where it's a composite bat, where it's attached, we try to tweak that and to make sure there isn't too much play there. So we talked about defective bats. What are illegal bats? Illegal bats are a bat that's been altered, say the end has been popped off, they've been shaved on the inside. A bat that doesn't meet the length or diameter requirements, that's too long or too big in diameter, that doesn't have the proper logo, or the logo is unreadable. Unreadable logos are not really an issue anymore in Little League Baseball, minor and majors, but it can be sometimes. All BPF marked bats, which once were the only bats allowed in Little League, all of those are now illegal at all levels of Little League baseball, not softball, but baseball. And a bat with pine tar or an adhesive substance, and it does not matter if that pine tar is dried, that makes it an illegal bat. So for minors and majors baseball, what are we looking for? Diameter of the barrel, 2 5/8 inches maximum. 2 1/4 is fine. Length, 33 inches or shorter. On a non-wood bat, it needs to have that USA bat logo. If it's a wood bat, it doesn't need that logo. If it has BPF or BBCOR, it is an illegal bat. Know that in intermediate and junior baseball, BBCOR is a legal bat. So for minors and majors baseball, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for that USA baseball logo. It may be in any one of those shades. What we will not allow is a BPF bat, or we will not allow a BBCOR bat. But remember, intermediate and junior baseball, we do allow a BBCOR bat. And this is generally where the USA baseball bat logo is. And so we make sure that the bats have that. So what happens if a batter steps into the batter's box with an illegal bat? Well, if the penalty is discovered before the next batter steps into the box, the batter is out. If a play occurred, the defensive manager has a choice to take. Do I take the out or do I take the play? If it's a strikeout, or if our player gets on first base, you're going to take the out. But if that batter hit into a double play, I would think you would take the double play. For the first violation, no matter if the defensive manager takes, declines or accepts that part of the penalty, what will happen, no matter what, is the first violation, the team loses an adult base coach position. The important word there is position. You don't kick out one of the coaches from the game. You just simply take them off the base coaching position, and they will have to have a kid with a helmet do that. Second violation, manager is ejected. Subsequent violation, the new manager is ejected. But remember, always remove the illegal bat from the game. It's a safety issue, period. If a player steps in and there's an illegal bat found, even if they do not take a single pitch and they're declared out, that will count as an at-bat for mandatory play. No traditional batting donuts are allowed. That light blue one there that has the red X on it, that is not allowed. And the middle one, just what a waste of donuts. You can use a batting sleeve, however. Okay, Don, do we have any questions from that part?
Jim, we've got a number of questions, so
Okay.
let's go back here. Let's start with the issue of players remaining in the dugout. So the question is, to keep the game moving, can the next batter exit the dugout to retrieve the bat that's left from the prior batter?
Absolutely. And we actually ask that they do that instead of having the manager or coach in the base coaching position come down and do that. We want a player with a helmet on, has to have a helmet on. We want them to come down and retrieve a bat. What we want to make sure, though, however, is the play is completed before that happens, because on occasion, what you can have is you can have the ball being hit, the kid opens the gate to go get the bat, and there's a throw to first base, and it's an overthrow, and the ball now goes into the dugout. So absolutely, we want kids to collect the bats.
Okay, so an add-on to that, to make it even easier, can the coach who's in the dugout leave the dugout to retrieve the bat and then go back to the dugout?
No, they cannot, because you only have 3 coaches, probably 2 are on the bases. That leaves you 1 adult in the dugout, and you cannot have that adult leave the dugout.
And while we're on this, would you comment on having a coach leave the coacher's box to retrieve a bat?
We do not want that to happen. We want coaches to stay in those boxes.
Okay, now we're talking about safety equipment. What about sliding gloves that we now see with certain base runners? Are those legal?
Those are perfectly legal. I don't really see a sense in having them in minors and majors, because you cannot legally slide into a base. You can slide back to a base head first. Sliding into a base, you can't slide into it head first. But yes, they're perfectly legal.
Okay, now we have a mandatory play question. What if a player is late arriving to the game? Do they still have to meet mandatory play?
If you have a player who arrives late to the game, it is to the manager's discretion whether they want to play that player or not. The manager has every right to say, no, you're late and you're not going to play in this game. If, however, the player is late and the manager wants to play that player in the game, they will be required to meet mandatory play. So if the kid shows up in the 5th inning, you may want to think about it. Otherwise, I would strongly suggest, listen, if a kid shows up late to a game, chances are that it wasn't the kid's fault, that they were late. Don't penalize them. And chances are it's not even the parents' fault. The parents are very busy. They may have kids in various sports. They're, working. They're just trying to get by. So I would say as a manager, try to show discretion there and get the kid in. But yes, they will have to meet mandatory play.
Okay, now I have a question about bats. For majors and minors, why are BBCOR bats not allowed?
Don, I'll let you take this. You know a little bit more of the engineering part of this.
Yeah, let me see if I can quickly address it. USA Baseball, youth baseball organizations have all agreed that BBCOR bats are basically the ball coming off the bat has potential to have too high a velocity and put our pitchers at risk. It's a safety issue. It is not anything associated with playing the game. And I also want to add to what Jim said about USA Baseball bats. If you are looking at a non-wood bat and it's marked USA Baseball, you will not find any 34-inch long bats, and you will not find any that are more than 2 5/8. If that USA Baseball stamp on the bat is actually a real manufacturer's stamp and not a counterfeit. So you can have some confidence that if you find a non-wooden bat with a USA Baseball logo on it, that it will meet the length and diameter requirements. Remember, though, wood bats could be longer than 33 inches, so you still need to, if it's a wood bat, check the length. So, I know that there are certain youth baseball organizations that don't follow the USA Baseball standard. And we may find bats, BBCOR bats, but I would also offer a 12-year-old player. I'm not sure how they can actually swing a BBCOR bat, because if you go and look at the size of BBCOR bats, the size and weight, BBCOR has a -3 weight restriction. So those are pretty large bats for a youth baseball player. So the last on this is, that's what the rule is, and that's what Jim is telling you what the rule is, and that's why they're not allowed. So
there you go.
There you go. Okay, mandatory play. Back to mandatory play. What if a batter gets hit in their at bat? Do they have to stay on base for it to count, or they can come out if they are injured, cannot continue the at bat on the running the bases?
Okay. We will never require that an injured player stay in a game. So if a player is hit, at bat, or if they're running the bases and tweak their ankle, if they need to be substituted for, they need to be substituted for. They can come back in the game later, and if they can't, and they can't complete that game, know that for mandatory play, guess what? They will be starting the next game, completing the mandatory play that they didn't get, and meeting mandatory play for that next game.
Okay, Jim, those are all the questions.
Oh, thank you, Don. Okay, we're moving on to Rule 2. And Rule 2 is really what I would call the heart of the rule book. And these are the definitions, and they are used throughout the rule book. And many of the rules that you'll read in Rule 5, Rule 6, you need the Rule 2 definition to interpret that rule. So what I would say to you is, if any of you are going to sit down with that rule book, start with Rule 2 and just slowly read through the definitions. And you will learn a lot, and that will give you the basis for understanding a lot of, or most all of the other rules. So what we're going to go do is go through some of those definitions. We're not going to go through all of them. Some real obvious ones we're not going to go through: obstruction, interference. Why? Because we will be covering those at a future rules clinic. Okay, fair territory. And this is especially important for newbies. What is fair territory? It's on or above the playing field, and that's very important, on or above, within and including the foul lines. So the foul lines are called foul lines, but they're actually in fair territory. Technically, they really should be called fair lines. So the lines are part of fair territory. All of the bases are in fair territory, including home plate. And fair territory extends all the way to the base of the outfield fence. If that's fair territory, what's foul territory? On or above, and that's very important. I want to keep mentioning that, on or above the playing field, outside the foul lines. Basically, that blue line, blue area there. Anything that's not in the fair area, that is not dead ball area, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is going to be foul territory. We also have dead ball area, and this is any area beyond a physical boundary. Most of our fields are delineated by fences, and anything on the other side of that fence is a dead ball area. Perhaps it's just roped off. Anything on the other side of that roped off area, dead ball area. If it's chalked, the other side of it, the stands, the bleachers, the dugouts are by definition dead ball areas. And there should be boundary lines here. So if you do happen to have a field that the fence only goes out maybe 80 feet and then it stops, most places play fence line extended. You draw an imaginary line beyond that fence, following that fence out if it had been constructed, and anything on the other side of that imaginary line, that would be dead ball area. Also, a dead ball area is an area where a ball is lodged in a fence, in a backstop, or in the catcher's equipment, or in the umpire's equipment. And I think Don has the distinction of having his ball bags being used as a dead ball area once. A pitch came in and it went into his ball bag. So that would be a dead ball area. Whenever we have a ball enter a dead ball area, we are going to call time. When a player with a ball steps across the line into a dead ball area, we will call time. In other words, they make a catch and then they step into the dugout. We will call time because they've entered a dead ball area. These are dead ball areas. Ball being caught in the fence. In Molina's chess card, he claims there was no stickum used there. There's an umpire where it lodged in his pocket. And down below a crevice in that outfield fence. Those are the plays that we would call time. Strike zone. Definition of a Little League strike zone. If any of you as umpires get asked by a manager or a coach, what is your strike zone? Simply tell them it's a Little League strike zone. If you are a manager or a coach, do not ask an umpire what their strike zone is. So what is the definition of a Little League strike zone? It measures from the top, from the armpits to the top of the knees and over home plate, provided that the player is taking a natural stance. And the batter's usual stance is what it would be when they're swinging at a pitch. So you can see that red box there that's created above home plate and is created by the top of the batter's knees to their armpits. If a pitch goes through that area, even just a fraction of the ball goes through that area, it has gone through the strike zone. So here's home plate. Both of these pitches have gone through the strike zone. It's a little bit of minutia, but the black beveled edge on a plate, home plate, is not part of the strike zone. It's only the white part of the plate. Does that mean as an umpire, that's all we will call as a strike? It has to cross over that plate? No, we're going to widen that zone. We're going to widen it, especially for the lower levels. And as the divisions go up, then we will begin to tighten that zone. So what about this batter? Is this really that batter's natural stance? No, it is not. And you can see even when the pitch comes in, the kid rises up. It's what their natural stance is when they are swinging at a ball. So that's the strike zone. What are strikes? Well, a strike is a pitch that crosses through the strike zone and is not struck at. In other words, a called strike, or a pitch that's struck at and missed, swing and a miss. A pitch that's fouled with less than 2 strikes, a foul tip, and we will go through a foul tip in a minute, offering a bunt, and we will talk in a minute about what a bunt is, a bunted foul ball with 2 strikes. That will be a dead ball, and that will be strike 3. A ball that touches the batter on the swing. The batter is swinging at the ball and the ball hits the batter. That is going to be a strike. What it also is a dead ball. We will immediately call time. Anytime a batter is hit with a ball in the batter's box, we are going to call time. Now, if that batter is swinging, guess what? And a ball hits him or her, they do not get first base. It will be counted as a strike. And there is a myth that the hands are part of the bat. The hands are not part of the bat. Go into Dick's Sporting Goods, go to their bat section, try to buy a bat that has a pair of hands attached to it. You will not be able to do that. When I pick up a bat and I put it down, my hands stay with me, not with the bat. The bat is one thing, a player is another thing. If the pitch touches the batter in flight in the strike zone, again, it hit the batter, so we're going to call time. But if the batter was crowding the plate and their hands are over the strike zone and that pitch hits their hands, it will be a strike. So this is a pitch that hits a batter, but hits the batter in the strike zone, and therefore this should be time, and that's a strike. It's going to hit their hands and not the bat, I can assure you of that. But it's between their knees, top of the knees, and their armpits. And watch the catcher's glove where he would have caught it over the plate. So that should be time. That's a strike. You stay here unless it's the 3rd strike. Here is a case where a batter is swinging and the ball hits their hands. This will be a time. That's a strike. Hands are not part of the bat. That's also a big ouch. So if those are strikes, what is a ball? Well, a ball is a pitch that does not enter the strike zone, even any part of the pitch, and is not struck out. If the ball bounces and bounces through the strike zone, it is still a ball unless the batter strikes at it. Okay, a foul tip. A foul tip is a batted ball that goes sharp and direct, which means it can't like kind of come up a little bit of a foul ball. It can't go up a foot. It has to go sharp and direct from the bat. And then it must first touch the catcher's hand or mitt. It cannot first touch their helmet. It cannot first touch their chest protector. It must first touch their hand or mitt and then is legally caught, secured in the hand or the glove. This is a live ball. We do not call time on this, and the runners may advance at their own risk. For those of you who follow Major League Baseball, know that the rule has changed a few years ago, and now the ball does not have to first touch the catcher's hand or mitt. However, in Little League, it still needs to first touch the catcher's hand or mitt. Here's an example of a ball struck and goes sharp and direct. First touches the catcher's glove. And is caught. And here the umpire is coming out and is going to give the sign for a foul tip. And then they would follow that up with a hammer sign as a strike. This is not a foul tip because it does not first touch the catcher's hand or glove. It doesn't matter that it doesn't touch the ground. He comes up with it. An umpire is absolutely correct in calling that a foul ball. Okay, we mentioned bunt earlier. What is a bunt? A bunt is a batted ball that's not swung at, but is intentionally, important word there, intentionally met with the bat and tapped slowly. The mere holding of a bat in the strike zone is not an attempted bunt. In softball, it is, but in baseball, it isn't. In softball, we must withdraw the bat, but in baseball, a player can stand and hold the bat over the plate, and the pitch can come in. And if they don't move the bat, that will only be a strike if it's a called strike. And bunts are not allowed in T-ball. Now, another very basic definition, and that's a fair ball. So a fair ball is a ball that settles on fair territory before first or third base. Say a bunt or a little squibber out in front of the plate, the ball comes to a stop. It is, and it's on fair territory, it is a fair ball. If the ball lands on home plate and dies on home plate is part of fair territory, it is a fair ball. If a ball is hit and it bounds over fair territory past first or third base, that is also a fair ball. If a ball is hit to the outfield beyond first or third base, line drive, fly ball, and it first lands on fair territory, it is a fair ball. It doesn't matter what happens to that ball after that. If it rolls into foul territory on the fly, if it first hit in fair territory past first and third, it is a fair ball. Nothing changes that. If it touches first or third base, remember, first and third base are in fair territory. If it touches a person on or over fair territory, it is also a fair ball. What we are concerned about here is not where the person is standing. We don't care where the feet are. What we care about is where was that ball first touched? Was it on or over fair territory? If it was, it is a fair ball. Or a ball that passes out of the playing field on flight in fair territory. In other words, a home run. So if that's a fair ball, what makes a foul ball? A foul ball is kind of the opposite. It settles on fair territory before first or third base, dies in foul territory before first or third base, that bounds past first or third base in foul territory, that first lands on foul territory past first or third base, or that touches a person or a foreign object, and a bat in foul territory is considered a foreign object that touches a person or foreign object on or over foul territory. Again, doesn't matter where that person is standing. What matters is where was that ball touched, on or over fair or foul territory. If it was on or over foul territory, it is a foul ball. So determining fair or foul ball, and somebody is writing on the screen, and can they please erase that and not do that anymore? Thank you. Okay, so if we look here, this player has touched the ball. We'll assume this is the first base line, has first touched the ball in fair territory. So this is a fair ball. Doesn't matter where his feet are. Now we have player has both feet in fair territory. Doesn't matter. Where did they first touch the ball? They touched it over foul territory. This is a foul ball. These are all examples of fair balls. It doesn't matter where the ball first hits. It doesn't matter if the majority of the distance that the ball travels is in foul territory. All of these will be fair balls because they were either touched before first or third base in fair territory, on or above, that they bounded on over first or third base in fair territory, or that they touched first or third base, or that on a fly, they first landed on fair territory. So these are all fair balls. This is why it's important as an umpire to not immediately call fair or foul balls, especially near the line. Wait till it's touched by somebody. Touches third base. This is one bounding over first base in fair territory. Same here. And here the ball first lands past first base on the foul line. The foul line is fair territory. Therefore, this is a fair ball. We talk to umpires about any call that's going to be made around that fair foul line. Is we want you to get belt buckle on the line, get your head on the line so that you can determine that catch. This is one of the most difficult fair foul determinations there are in baseball or softball. This is a player running towards a foul line, and the ball will be touched right at the line. It doesn't matter, again, where they're standing. It matters is where that ball was touched. This matters because this player will not actually catch the ball. If they caught the ball, it's going to be an out. But is this fair or foul? Difficult to tell by that camera angle, but we have an umpire who's stationary, who's set, who has belt buckle on line, and he's the best one to make that determination. Okay, Don, do we have questions?
Yeah, Jim, we got a couple. Sorry, I need to find the question. This has to do with dead ball areas. So if a player catches a ball over the fence, but then falls over the fence, but keeps control of the ball, is it still an out?
We will be going over that in a future one about base awards. Yes, that will be a catch as long as they keep control. Once they fall over into that dead ball area, though, umpires will call time. But what will happen is if there are any runners on base, they will all advance one base with a one base base award.
Okay, the other one has to do with the definition of fair territory and a field that's enclosed by an outfield fence. Since fair territory by definition extends to the base of the outfield fence, then straight up into the sky, does that mean that the fence itself is in dead ball territory? How do we how do we how do we resolve these rules?
Okay. So to the base of the fence, what we go by is the fence will be in the fair ball area. So in other words, if a bounding ball hits that fence in the outfield, it will still be a fair ball and it will be still a live ball. If I'm reading that question correctly.
I think that's the way we play it, right?
Yep.
That the fence is part of fair territory. Okay, here's a question. Not sure we've covered this, but let's see what kind of answer you can get. What if the umpire clearly makes the wrong call on a pitch in the strike zone that hits the batter swinging? Can the coach pull the umpire aside?
Can the coach pull the umpire aside?
Yeah, I'm reading the question the way the person.
Okay, okay. So what the manager can do is the manager can call time and request to talk to the umpire and can ask, was the player hit in the strike zone? If the umpire says no, it's the end of the discussion. If the umpire says yes, then the manager can then say, well, wouldn't that make it a strike? And if the umpire says no, then the manager has a right to protest that interpretation of the rules.
Okay. And those are the questions that we have.
Okay, we're at 8:16. We will go through a few more slides, but we will definitely be all over by 8:30. Okay, let's go through a catch. So the catch is an act of a fielder, and please, folks, stop drawing on the thing. Catch is act of a fielder of a ball in flight that's either hit or thrown. And to have a catch, what do we need? We need secure possession. We need complete control. We can't be bobbling the ball. We can't have the ball moving around in the glove, for example. It must be possessed within the hand or the glove. It can't be under your armpit, for example. And there must be what we call voluntary and intentional release. In other words, the fielder having secure possession and complete control, then if the ball is in the glove, reaches into the glove and is intentionally removing that ball. If in the process of removing that ball, the fielder drops the ball, we still consider that a catch. That's a drop on the transfer. And for those of you who are umpires, the signal for that is to go on the transfer, alligator mouth, basically. When is it not a catch? If simultaneously or immediately, and those are the words in the rule book, that player collides with another player, falls, or runs into the fence and loses the ball. So if a player makes a shoestring catch, but is tripping for the next 15 feet, has the ball for a couple of seconds, but then falls to the ground from that whole act of catching, and the ball comes out, that is not a catch. So here is an example of a player colliding with a fence and then colliding with the ground and that causing the ball to come out. This is not a catch. Even though he has possession there, falling down, hitting the ground, the ball comes out, not a catch. Now, I want you to watch the umpire on this because this is exactly what we as umpires want to do. We want to go out on fly balls. If we have this is a 4 umpire crew, so you do that with a 4 umpire crew. But if you'll notice, the umpire doesn't go straight at the player. The umpire creates a good angle to see the catch. The umpire is then stationary when the ball is caught, and the umpire then does not make a signal of out until after that umpire sees voluntary release. Stationary, waits, voluntary release, only then does the umpire call an out. That's an ideal example of umpiring. I want to show you another example of what we try not to do. And this is not trying to criticize the umpire. You could find a video of me, probably, of me doing this exact same thing at some point. So here we have an example of an umpire running straight towards a catch, of not stopping, and that the player collides with the ground and the umpire does not wait to see if the ball is dislodged or not. So if we go back here a second, this is an amazing catch by this girl. She did keep possession of it, but we see her going down to the ground right here. And we can see that the umpire is already coming up with his out call. But what he should do is wait to see if she maintains control of the ball. Here is a catch, but a drop on the transfer. Secure possession, intentionally reaching into the glove, and only then drops it. That's still going to be an out. Okay, this will be the last thing we go through in infield fly. Always a fun time at a Little League game, especially at the lower levels. Some people will say, oh, we don't have the infield fly rule in minors. It is in the rule book. In minor division, you need to have the infield fly rule. We need to be teaching kids about the infield fly rule. But guaranteed chaos will ensue. So when do we have an infield fly situation? There must be fewer than 2 outs. There must be runners at first and second base or bases loaded. Those are the only 2 runner configurations that we will have an infield fly situation. We must have a fair fly ball. It must be fair. It can't be foul. It can't be a bunt that goes up in the air. It can't be a line drive. It must be a player who has been stationed in the infield. It must be a ball that can be caught with ordinary effort. Now, that varies by division. We don't go by, oh, that's Billy, and he's the star shortstop, so I'm going to expect a lot of effort from him versus a kid who's never played in the infield before. What you do is you go by that division and you go, what is the typical ordinary effort of a player in that division? So it will vary by division. The sun cannot be a factor in an infield fly, but the wind can. In other words, you as an umpire can take wind into consideration. So we have all that situation, fewer than 2 outs. Say we have runners at first and second, bases loaded, and somebody hits a fly ball in the infield, and with ordinary effort, it can be caught. What do we have then? The batter is out, whether the ball is caught or not. That's why we as umpires will point up in the sky with a finger. We will say infield fly, batter is out. The force is now removed because that batter is not forcing the other runners to advance the base. Those runners can simply stay on their base and they cannot be forced. The ball is live. If the runners want to advance, they can, but they're doing it at their own risk. And if that fly ball, infield fly, is caught, the runners must tag to advance. So here's an example of an infield fly that is not caught. The batter is still declared out, and the runner at first base runs at their own risk. Batter is out. Doesn't matter that he didn't catch it. Runner ran at their own risk. We now have a double play. In this situation, there was 1 out. Runner is at first and second. Umpires at this point have already pointed to the sky. You can see that one umpire. They've called that batter out. Even major leaguers. What is ordinary effort? I use this as an example to show something that would not be an ordinary effort. Here we have runners at first and second. We're going to see this twice. First time, I want you to look at the first baseman. The second time we show it, I want you to look at the second baseman. These were not cases of ordinary effort. First baseman has to run behind. Here's the second baseman all the way over to second base, still can't make the catch. That would not be ordinary effort. Okay. These will be things that we cover when we start next time. Don, do we have any final questions?
So Jim, we have an infield fly question. The question is, should we call infield fly at every level of baseball, including our lower levels like AA and AAA?
Yes, it's in the rule book. However, you can interpret ordinary effort. And if you want to interpret ordinary effort as a player who doesn't move, and the ball comes down basically into their glove, then if you consider that ordinary effort for that level, then call an infield fly. But it's up to our coaches and managers to be teaching the infield fly rule to the kids. They shouldn't first be acquainted with it at the major level.
Okay, here's kind of an umpire question. Are verbal out safe announcements required on all out safe plays when a live ball is in play? What if the batter runner is clearly out or safe by a mile?
No, it does not have to be verbalized. So especially if a runner is thrown out at first base and they are 15 feet from the base, I will just give a simple physical out and I won't verbalize it. And when we're no catch, generally, in many cases, I'm not going to verbalize that, especially if I go out into the outfield. Nobody's going to hear me anyway.
Okay, those are our questions.
Okay, let me just do a couple slides here. So as a reminder to you, register for our next rules clinics. Next one is next Thursday, and we're going to cover rules 2 through 7. We have to finish up with some rule 2 stuff, beginning and ending the game, batters and runners. Then on that following week, we're going to cover base awards, interference and obstruction. And the final one, we're going to cover pitchers and the umpires, and we will go through the interleague rules. And there again is where you registered. But hey, if you showed up here, you know where to register. Also want to remind you of those other 2 clinics. Put them on your calendar, register online for the Teenage Baseball Rules Clinic, the Softball Rules Clinic. Hey, all you have to do is show up for that one.